Imagine being out in the middle of nowhere. It's freezing cold, probably 30 degrees below zero. Snow is everywhere, as far as you can see. You're with your friends, all experienced hikers who know exactly what they're doing. You've done trips like this before. Everything should be fine. But then something happens. Something so terrifying that you grab a knife and start cutting through your own tent from the inside. You don't even stop to put on your boots. You run out into the frozen darkness, into snow that could kill you in minutes. Whatever is out there or in there with you is so horrifying that dying in the cold seems like the better option. This isn't a horror movie. This actually happened. And what makes it even more disturbing is that we still don't know why. It was January 1959 in the Soviet Union. A group of 9 hikers, all experienced, all physically fit, decided to go on a winter expedition through the Ural Mountains. These weren't just random college kids looking for adventure. They were serious hikers, the kind of people who had done this 100 times before. Their leader, Igor Dyatlov, was 23 years old and had led multiple successful expeditions. The group consisted of 8 men and 2 women. They were students and recent graduates, all in their 20s except for one man who was 37. They had the right equipment, the right experience, and the right training. Everything was planned perfectly. The route they chose was difficult, sure, but nothing they couldn't handle. They expected to be gone for about 3 weeks. On January 27th, they started their journey. The first few days went smoothly. They were making good progress, taking photos, documenting everything like experienced hikers do. One member of the group, Yuri Yudin, had to turn back early because he got sick. He said goodbye to his friends on January 28th. He had no idea he would be the only one to make it out alive. The remaining 9 continued forward. They were heading toward a mountain called Otorten. On February 1st, they reached the edge of a highland area. They started climbing. Now, here's where things get strange. For some reason, they made camp on the slope of a mountain called Kholat Syakhl. In the local language, that name means dead mountain. The spot they chose was unusual. Experienced hikers know you don't camp on an open slope in winter if you can avoid it. It's too exposed, too windy, too dangerous. But for some reason, they set up their tent right there. That was the last normal thing they did. When the group didn't return as scheduled, people started to worry. On February 20th, almost 3 weeks after they had last been seen, a search party was sent out. What they found has haunted investigators and researchers for over 6 decades. The tent was still there, half buried in snow, but it had been ripped open. Not from the outside, like something had broken in. From the inside. Someone had used a knife to cut through the canvas from within, making slashes big enough to climb through. And all the hikers' belongings, their clothes, their boots, everything, was still inside. Whoever left that tent left in a panic, without taking anything they'd need to survive. The searchers followed footprints leading away from the tent. These weren't the footprints of people walking calmly. Some were barefoot, some were in socks, some were wearing a single shoe. The tracks led downhill toward a nearby forest about a mile away, and they stayed together at first, suggesting the group was still somewhat organized when they fled. At the edge of the forest, under a large cedar tree, searchers found the first 2 bodies. Both men were dressed only in their underwear. No shoes, no coats, nothing. They had apparently tried to climb the tree because branches were broken off up to about 15 feet high, and there was skin from their hands on the bark. Someone had also built a small fire near the tree, though it had long since gone out. The bodies of Igor Dyatlov and 2 others were found between the cedar tree and the tent. They were positioned as if they had been trying to crawl back to the camp. All 3 were slightly more dressed than the first 2 victims, but still not enough to survive in those temperatures. And here's something really strange. Some of them were wearing clothes that belonged to the two men found under the tree. They had apparently taken clothing off the dead bodies, trying desperately to stay warm. But the real horror was still to come. 2 months later, in May, after the snow had started to melt, searchers found the remaining 4 bodies. They were buried under several feet of snow in a ravine about 250 feet further into the woods from the cedar tree. And these bodies told a completely different story. One woman, Lyudmila Dubinina, was missing her tongue, eyes, and part of her lips. Another victim had major skull damage. 2 others had severe chest fractures, the kind of injuries you'd see in a car crash or falling from a great height. One medical examiner said the force required to cause those chest injuries was comparable to being hit by a car. But there were no external wounds, no cuts, no bruises on the outside, just massive internal damage. And they were wearing pieces of each other's clothing, mixed and matched, like they had been trying to share whatever warmth they could find. Some of the clothing was found to be radioactive, though only slightly, and not on all items. The Soviet investigators closed the case pretty quickly. Their official conclusion? The hikers died from a compelling natural force. That's it. No details, no explanation, just a vague statement that basically meant they had no idea what happened. The case files were locked away and kept secret for years. So what actually happened on that mountain? Theories have ranged from the logical to the absolutely bizarre. Some people think it was an avalanche. The hikers heard it coming, cut their way out of the tent, and ran for safety. But this theory has problems. There was no evidence of an avalanche at the site. The tent was still standing, partially intact. And would an avalanche explain the bizarre injuries, the missing clothing, the radiation? Others suggest military testing. The area wasn't far from known military facilities. Maybe the hikers stumbled onto something they weren't supposed to see. Maybe they were exposed to weapons testing or toxic chemicals. This could explain the strange injuries and the radiation. But it doesn't explain why they cut their way out of the tent and ran into the freezing night. Some investigators have suggested infrasound. This is a low-frequency sound that can be created by wind moving across certain landscapes. It can cause panic, paranoia, and even physical pain in humans. Maybe something about that mountain slope created infrasound strong enough to drive the hikers into a terrified frenzy. They fled their tent in pure panic, not thinking clearly, and succumbed to the cold. Then there are the stranger theories. Local indigenous people had stories about the area being cursed or inhabited by evil spirits. Some people believe the hikers encountered something paranormal. Others point to reports of strange lights in the sky that night, suggesting UFOs or some kind of unexplained phenomenon. The truth is, we don't know. After all these years, with all our technology and expertise, we still can't explain what happened on Dead Mountain. In 2019, 60 years after the incident, Russian authorities reopened the investigation. They used modern forensic techniques, computer modeling, and consulted with dozens of experts. Their conclusion? Probably an avalanche. But even they admitted their explanation doesn't account for everything. The case was closed again, but the mystery remains. What makes this story so terrifying isn't just that 9 people died. It's that they were experienced hikers who knew what they were doing. It's that they were so terrified of something that they chose to run into the deadly cold rather than stay in their tent. It's that whatever happened to them caused injuries that forensic experts still struggle to explain. It's that after 6 decades, we're no closer to understanding what really happened. 9 people went into those mountains. 1 came back only because he got sick before reaching Dead Mountain. The other 9 died in ways that still don't make complete sense. Their tent was cut from the inside. Their bodies were found scattered, broken, and missing pieces. And the only official explanation we've ever gotten is that they died from a compelling natural force. Whatever that force was, it was powerful enough to drive experienced hikers to their deaths. And somewhere up on that mountain, the answer still waits in the snow. If this story gave you chills, make sure to hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications because we've got more terrifying true stories coming your way. What do you think happened on Dead Mountain? Was it an avalanche, military testing, or something we can't even begin to explain? Drop your theories in the comments below. And if you want more unsolved mysteries that'll keep you up at night, check out the video we've linked in the description. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that actually happened.